Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Rising and Thriving podcast, the space where real men rebuild, rise, and reclaim purpose. Today, I want to have a real conversation, one that most men try to avoid. And we're talking about the legal side of divorce, the part that happens in court where decision about your money, your time, and your children are made. A lot of men walk into that process unprepared. They think the judge will hear about their bad marriage and see their side. They believe justice will come from telling their story. But when the decision comes, child support is set, visitation is fixed, it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like the system turned against them. And that moment is hard. It's hard because it's not just about the money or the schedule. It's about what it does to your mind, your peace, and your sense of self. So, today we're going to talk about how men can prepare for divorce, not just legally, but mentally, emotionally, and financially. And more importantly, how to stay grounded and show up for your kids through all of it. My guest today is someone who's seen this process from every angle or every side. He's a family law attorney, mediator, and the host of the Lawyer and Mediator International show and podcast. He's also built platforms and tools to help parents lower conflicts and protect what matters most, their children. His name is Mac-Arthur Pierre-Louis. And together we're going to unpack what really happens when the courts get involved and what it takes for a man to walk through that process without losing himself. Without further ado, let's go to our episode. Have you ever felt like you were stuck? Asking yourself, how do I find clarity and purpose when everything around me feels overwhelming? And I'm not even sure where I'm going. Well, you're not alone. Whether you're running a business, raising kids, or trying to keep up with the demands of life, we all reach a point where we lose our sense of direction. But here's the thing. If you're ready to rediscover your passion, find your way back again, and reconnect with what truly matters to you, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Yves Mukanya, and you are listening to the Rising and Thriving podcast. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate you for taking the time to come and talk to us, man. How
Yes.
you been? How you been?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, all right. What I wanted to do is just go start with the basic, because a lot of men walk into divorce thinking that the court will somehow make things right, that the judge will see how bad the marriage was and punish the ex, right? From your experience, why is that the wrong way to see it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have expectations that they conclude in their own heads. All right. I've been doing this for about 15 years. I became a lawyer in 2009, right out of law school, worked for the Attorney General Child Support Division. That's the agency in Texas that deals with child support enforcement and establishment. So right from the gate, I was seeing a lot of people come in. Sometimes they're going through divorce, sometimes separation. You saw the dynamics. It was a typical situation. It's a mom and a dad. They have a couple kids together, and they're splitting up. Mom's trying to quote unquote put dad on child support. Something that I heard a lot. And then that was the, I guess, opening of how I got involved into these people's lives. Okay. But after I left the AG, I started doing my own private practice, started doing my own divorce cases for men and women. I represented both sides. I noticed more dynamics. And the thing that you're asking about when it comes to court, people sometimes imagine that court is somewhere that you go to get justice. Court is somewhere where a judge is supposed to know it all and make good rulings, good decisions, and give you what you're looking for that you believe is right and just. But that's not what what's happening. I'm not saying that judges are bad people. I'm not saying that um, you know courts are not places where justice is supposed to be implemented. But people start believing delusions and conclusions that they've drawn up in their own heads, and they start thinking that court is supposed to work a certain way. And but here's the reality. The reality is that when two people go to court, sometimes people lie, and sometimes those lies are believed. A judge is a human being. They're not a robot. They're not a truth sayer. They don't know the absolute truth. They have a limited amount of time where these two people who come to them is supposed to, persuade them to have a position. They're given a small slice of the story from two different people who sometimes are competing about which version is true. With that being the pressure cooker that we're all in, do we really expect that the court's going to get it right all the time? So no. So what should be happening is, people should be taking a step back, reimagine what court is all about, understand that judges are human beings, they're fickle, they're sometimes wrong, they can believe a lie, and we got to be a little bit careful instead of just running into court and thinking that things are supposed to work out a certain way. So I think that would be my first thing. I would let people know that if you haven't gone through the court process, if you're going through a divorce for the first time, if you're going through a custody battle, or just anything involving your family for the first time, listen to people like me who have been in the trenches for what, a decade and a half now. You see the patterns, and so everything I'm going to tell you tonight is from stuff that I've seen, and the patterns over and over and over again that I've noticed in this state and in Florida.
Okay. Okay. But for those who you mentioned those who never been through it, like that's the first time, right? So can you walk us through how the court actually look at divorce, especially when it comes to things like child support, custody, and visitation?
Yeah, so every state's going to be different, right? You and me right now,
Mm-hmm.
we're in two different states, right? Two different
Mm-hmm.
time zones, and there's no what we call federal family law. There's state. We always say family law is a creature of the state. Each state has their own family law.
Mm-hmm.
More or less, it's kind of unified. We have these things called uniform laws. For example, the uniform laws on child support under the UIFSA. All the states kind of adopted, or the
Mm-hmm.
uniform laws on custody jurisdiction when people move across state lines. But aside from that, and aside from the broad consensus that most states have, there's some specifics. So we have to start off with, okay, what state are we talking about? But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that we are in a fictional state, called State A.
Mm-hmm.
And in State A, you're going to have this typical classic situation where, when it comes to divorce, the courts are going to look at, one, children, the most important part,
Mm-hmm.
and two, property. Okay, and why? Well, for children, the state, the government, society has an interest in children being protected and supported. We want to make sure that if two people no longer see eye to eye and they're at each other's throats, that the children are not going to be caught in the middle and suffer. For property, the state wants to make sure that people are not suffering injustice, that if you're in a relationship and you are contributing toward the future, you're building things, building businesses, saving money, or the opposite, breaking things, wasting money, wasting assets, giving them to your mistress on the side. The government has an interest to make sure that the other spouse is going to have what it is that they're entitled to in that relationship. So the court starts looking at those two things, children and property, to make sure that interests are protected, and children always goes first. So if you have a divorce with no kids, well, we can remove one of the issues off the table, and that'll make for pretty easy, I think, faster. I should not say easy. I should say a faster divorce that should just be about stuff, okay, that you can't take with you when you die, right? But if you have kids, that can become a whole lot more complicated, because now you're dealing with the thing that matters. And when I worked for the Attorney General's office, I had this saying to myself. I always said that child support involves people's money, their sex lives because of paternity, and their children. The three most intimate things about you: money, your sex life, and your kids. We, the government, gets involved. The courts get involved, and so it's a thing you got to think about. You got to start preparing for. It's a thing you need to consult a lawyer about before you start going through it, because those three areas are going to come up if you have children involved in a divorce case.
Okay. Okay. So if one of your client came to you,
Yeah.
right, and hoping and telling you that he's hoping the judge will see how toxic his marriage was,
Mm.
what would you say to him? What would be the first thing that you would tell him?
Well, I get that call a lot, actually. I get people who ask me to predict, what do you think? And this is part of the job as a lawyer is we cannot ever guarantee anything. We cannot ever
Mm-hmm.
promise anything, or we might know the court. Some of these judges, I've went to law school with them. I'm 46 years old, and so now I'm starting to have gray hair, actually. And some of the judges on the bench, I literally graduated law school with them, and
Mm-hmm.
and I still cannot guess what they're going to do. So a client comes to me and they're like, "Here's what I've been going through: toxic relationship," and I my questions to them is going to be about evidence. Court is not about what you believe. Court is about what you can prove. Okay,
It's
and
not about what you believe. It's about what you
correct,
can prove.
correct. And I think
Okay.
people, back to the whole delusion thing, people start believing, "Oh no, I believe this fact. I know it happened, and of course the court's going to hear it
Mm-hmm.
and apply the law logically and give me justice." But no, what's what it's about is you have a fact that happened. I believe you. You're my client. I believe you. Okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you can't prove it, then we potentially could be spending, thousands of dollars and many, many hours in court and spinning our wheels. And sometimes what happens is one spouse has been planning the divorce or preparing for the exit, and they may be gathering evidence, making the plan, recording people, taking pictures, gathering evidence. And the other spouse, sometimes, a lot of times, it's the guy, is a man who is kind of, caught fat footed. He is talking to a lawyer for the first time because he's found out that his wife's about to file a lawsuit. And it's his first time calling a lawyer expressing these things that are happening to him. But dude, your wife's been talking to a lawyer for the last 6 months, and so which party in that situation is going to be more prepared to muster evidence and bring it to the court? It's going to be the party who has been planning. I guess some people might say scheming, but a lot of times there's going to be a disparity in the amount of evidence that can be shown to the court. So it's not about what you believe; it's about what you can prove, and it comes back to evidence. If you're going to go to court, you have to have things that are going to persuade. You don't have a lot of time to just say a bunch of words. You have to go and bring it. Thankfully, we have two big things in between the start of a divorce and a trial where the judge is going to hear all this,
Okay.
and that kind of act like road bumps to slow the process down and get people to think and maybe even resolve the case before it gets to the judge. The first one is going to be the discovery process. Uh, Discovery is basically the process in a lawsuit, in a court case, where both sides get to ask questions, get to dig into the documentation, the evidence, and see what the other side has.
Yeah,
That,
and that's
yeah,
going to be between the two lawyers, right?
between the two lawyers, and and
Okay.
and usually, really, the two lawyers are going to do the work, but the
Mhm.
parties have to produce it. And
Mhm.
so, for example, let's say you have a husband and wife who are going to be going through a divorce, and they have kids and they have property together. Divorce begins, and let's say 6 months out, there's a trial. Well, during that time, this first issue of discovery is going to come up.
Mm.
Lawyers hate it typically, it's a lot of work. And it's
Mm.
very and clients hate it because it's invasive. You're going to be asked questions. You have to go to your bank account. You have to produce records. You have to give the evidence that you might show the judge. You got to show to the other side first. And a lot of times when people start bringing out the evidence that they have on each other, they start realizing, oh, okay, you got some good evidence against me. You know what? Let me settle with you. Or you're the one who has really good evidence, and you show the other side this during the discovery process, and the other side might have a reality check, and they might be like, oh, you know what, let me not fight you. Let's start making deals, because we see now what's available. We see, I thought you had all this money hidden, but now through the discovery process, I see the bank accounts. I can see what money exists. Okay, now we can deal with reality, and actually know what each other has. Now we can deal with evidence about children. Oh, you were accusing me of adultery, of cheating before. Now you've just showed me the picture. Okay, you got me. You got me. Okay, you know what? Let's make a deal. So anyway, the discovery process is one of the tools during the middle of a divorce case that can help everyone slow down, see what the court might eventually see, and start making rational decisions and negotiate based on what it is. Okay, so that's the first big thing that might keep you out of court, out of trial, by helping the two sides start talking based on what is on the table to be debated.
So, if I'm understanding correctly,
Yes.
the discovery sounds to me like it's the investigation part, right?
Correct. That's all. That's
Okay.
what it is. It's
Uh,
this perfect word for it. It's the investigation process that both lawyers. You don't have to have a lawyer to go through it, but both
mhm,
sides engage in order to bring out everything. And you have a right to it. And the reason it's good, it's a lot of work and it can be costly, but the reason it's good is because it forces each side to put what they have on the table, so that
mhm,
both sides are on the same page about what exists. And I'm telling you, if one side has really good evidence against the other in whatever argument dispute that they have, whether it's over property and money, or
mhm,
over adultery, or over custody, once you put evidence on the table and both sides can see it, it makes each side more willing and ready to just go ahead and just settle the case, because now they know who has a stronger argument, who might
mhm.
be able to persuade the judge more. So anyway, that's the discovery process. And then the other one is the one you already know. It's mediation. when
Mediation.
people
Okay.
when people go to mediation, they're able to work out a deal, and most mediations are successful. I'm a mediator myself,
Mhm,
not just a litigator. But in mediation, when people come to me, they resolve their case, their differences, without going to court. And last night, for example, I did a mediation for a husband and a wife,
mhm,
and I got the case settled, and it worked out. And I think I've saved the two sides thousands of dollars from not having now to have to go to court next month.
mhm.
It's over. And
Okay.
so anyway, I love that kind of work, because people sometimes just need to talk to a third person instead of a
Okay.
judge.
So tell me, what's the difference between, because a lot of what we see are like, okay, it's always going to court and then the judge is there. But what is the big difference between mediation and the court going to court in front of a judge?
Yes,
What?
yes. So when you go to a judge, you have a
Mhm,
third person make a decision based on what they've heard, evidence.
mhm,
Mediation is fundamentally different. You still go to a third person. However, that third person is not going to make a decision for you. That third person is going to be more of a facilitator of a conversation to help you communicate.
mhm,
Because the honest truth is that communication is the issue. A lot of people
mhm,
would never need to go to a mediator or a judge at all if they could just work out their differences by talking to each other. But because family law or any kind of dispute people might have can be emotional, and human beings were emotional creatures, it's not
mhm,
our fault. It's a good thing. Okay, we care. Because we care,
mhm,
sometimes we can get we have this phrase called hijacked. Okay, we have in our brain our prefrontal cortex up here, where we make rational decisions. We think logically, up here. But back here in our mammalian brain, we have what's called the amygdala. And we have
mhm,
this phrase called amygdala hijacking, where that part of your brain gets hijacked by your emotions and it can take control, and then you react, you do things fast, and you say mean things, you say hurtful things, and then that can trigger the other person, and then you start creating a cycle,
Mm.
and then before you know it, it's World War III between two people who at one point in time said they loved each other, made vows to each other, had two beautiful, love children,
Mhm.
but now they find themselves at war. Well, how do we get here? It's because of that cycle we get into. So when you find yourself there, you probably can't meaningfully communicate with the other side to make a good decision with them that's going to be healthy and is trusted by the other side. That's
Mhm.
when it's time to say, you know what? Let's go to a third person who's objective,
Mhm.
who is neutral, who is outside of it, who can see things if they're experienced, and who can see things. They don't have the blind spot that you have, and
Mhm.
you admit, look, I have the blind spots because I'm in it. I'm in the emotion
Mhm.
of it. But this third person, the mediator, doesn't have that. Let's go to
Mhm.
that person, and that person can help you to communicate in a way that can hopefully lead to a resolution. And we call this alternative dispute resolution. You can resolve your dispute outside of court
Mhm.
through the help of a mediator. And
Okay.
that's what I do. And that's what the mediator does. That's different from what the judge does, which is just decide for you.
Okay. And when we talk about cost, does it cost more to go to mediation, or does it cost more to go in front of a judge?
Yeah. So going in front of a judge is always going to be much more expensive. Um, Going to mediation is supposed to save you money. And so you go there because it does not just save you money, but it also saves you time. It's a lot faster. When you go to the courts, the judge has a docket. They have a lot of cases ahead of you. You're in line to be heard. You get your court date months out. Whereas mediation is something that's can very much be instant. I actually years ago created this website called instantmediators.com. Instant mediators is the idea that if you have a conflict, you shouldn't have to live in it. You should be able to just get your opponent and invite them to mediation instantly, and then go to a lawyer, or a lawyer or mediator, but usually a mediator who is going to be kind of like an emergency room. Okay, they're there on, they're ready, and they can be scheduled in a matter of days, if not weeks. But I think in theory, you should be able to schedule a mediator within hours. That would be awesome. You could resolve any dispute. What an incredible world
Mhm.
that would be.
Mhm. All right. All right. Like it's funny that you're talking about
Mhm.
the judge and stuff, because
Yep.
when I went through my own divorce, I remember how I mean I feeling like the the process was very transactional and cold,
Yes.
compared to how I really felt inside. Like, just for in case, right? We went the first day that we went to court. We walked in. I had my lawyer. My ex-wife had her lawyer. We sat down. The judge took our packets, and the first question she asked was, "Is he on child support?" And they're like, "Yeah," because at the time there was no child support enforcement and nothing like that. But I was still paying because I moved out, but I was still paying to support my kids.
Sure.
And the judge was like, "Okay, he has to go on child support." Bam, next case. I was like, "Well, okay." Like, not even hearing what we were about to say, or you know nothing. It was just very transactional, straight to the point, and it was like, "Oh, this is very cold, man."
Yeah.
So in those things, like, my question for you is that, like, from your point of view, why is that gap between the legal process and the emotional reality so painful for men?
Yeah. It's good. So I understand I understand, what you're saying when you felt that juxtaposition where you're living this as personal. You have your soon to be ex, right next to you. You guys have kids together. and you're making decisions within that context.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's the other person who has been entrusted by the voters, to be there to make a decision, and it seems cold because they are not involved in your minutia. They're not involved in that, and so to them, you are a file,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I'll be honest, they probably don't want to be seeing you guys. Okay. Most judges are happy that you've settled your case privately. I'm telling you this. Okay. Most judges want you to work out a deal
Mm-hmm.
because when a court of law has to be forced to make a decision, a lot of times neither one's going to be happy. That's one possibility, but a lot of times it's going to create more division because the court will have been forced to create a winner and create a loser. For example, in Texas, we have, um, you know, conservatorship over children. Other states might call it custody. And we typically will hear, okay, one parent has custody and the other one is the non custodial parent. You hear this. But it doesn't have to be that way in mediation. You can work it out yourselves with the help of a mediator. But to the court cannot give you a 50-50. The court cannot give you something that's going to be touchy feely and account for all the specific things that you want the judge to think about for that specific child, or the things that you're used to, extracurricular activities, private school. The court is going to be very black and white about it. The court is going to be like, look, I can't make a decision that's going to make you both completely happy. I'm tasked with the statutes before me and the law to go with presumptions, guidelines, and here's how it's going to be. If you don't like it, appeal me. Or if you don't like it, go settle it yourself the way you want. And unless it's going to be dangerous to the child, the judges will approve it. And so mediation is one of those powerful ways. I think it's becoming more popular because people are realizing, you know what, I don't want to take a chance in front of this, person, in front of this stranger. They don't know my kid. They've never been to my home. They are simply going off of the law. And the other, let's be honest, possibility that the court might be going off of is politics, voting, elections. And so you don't want to, have your destiny, so to speak, in the hands of another human being who may have other motives at work. So of course I say that with respect to all judges. I just think that human beings are very incentive driven, and judges and courts may not necessarily make decisions that are in your best interest if they also have an election coming up. So,
Gotcha. So the politics also play a
I
big part behind it.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to admit that, of course,
To,
but
to,
I'm just keeping it real.
you know what? To be honest, I didn't know that, and I'm like, that's a huge reality check, right? Because, and I think a lot of men hearing this right now, might like, they can't realize like, okay, you know what? I'm approaching this, or I'm looking at this process the wrong way, but it is scary that your whole life, right, your entire life is decided by someone who has different incentive. It doesn't make decision. I know that they're supposed to follow, as you said, there's guidelines and all that stuff, but if politics plays into it, you can understand how scary it is for men behind it, right, when they hear something like that.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I obviously no one's ever going to admit that, but we're human, and the judges as well. And there's no such thing as a human being who is going to ever completely judge justly, in the ways of God. Like, there's no such thing. It's not possible. The best we can do in our society, all right, is create systems and rules, try to get it right, and In some societies in the past, perhaps it was the town elder, the village
Mm.
elder. You sometimes it would be a relative, because you all go to the patriarch of the family or the matriarch of the family to get their advice about what should happen. But here, in the West, especially in the U.S., we have the system set up this way, where it's going to be a person who is elected or appointed, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, who will make the decision. And I personally would not want somebody else to be making these kind of big decisions over me, especially over my children. You know, so so if the other spouse is reasonable, work out a deal with them and keep it out of the hands of a third person. But in some cases, the other spouse is not reasonable. Sometimes there's violence involved. Sometimes there's coercion, extortion, and threats involved. Sometimes there's abuse. So sometimes you have no choice. You have to take it to a court. Okay. So I'm not saying every case needs to be resolved outside of court. When you can, you should. But sometimes you need to go to a judge. You have no choice. And it's to protect children, it's to protect your assets. So
Okay. All right. Oh, good, good, good. So at this point, I want to take a step back a little bit,
sure.
and I want to learn a little bit about you
All right.
because I want to understand where your perspective comes from, right? And I believe it might really help us frame the discussion moving forward. So, from the little bit I've been able to gather, yeah, you're a lawyer, and as you say yourself, like you're a mediator, and I also found out you're a podcast host. So clearly, you're someone who's passionate about helping family find peaceful way through this difficult transitions.
Yep.
So, uh, what made you want to go into law in the first place?
Yes. So it's kind of dumb, actually. um,
That's the first time that
w-
I'm
w-
hearing a lawyer say that.
when I was a kid, my
Mhm,
sister and I had this thing that I was going to be a doctor, and she was going
mhm,
to be a lawyer. Today, she's a doctor, and I'm the lawyer. So that's why I say it's kind of dumb, because that's just how it was. And
mhm,
she's a dermatologist, and I'm a family law attorney. She's better in math than I am, and we were just always competitive. So but we flipped along the way, because I went to school, University of Florida, Gainesville,
mhm,
and my major was supposed to be like this combination of political science with pre med. Started taking chemistry, biology, math, and I just realized, you know what, this isn't for me.
mhm,
So I started dropping courses left and right, and before I know it, I was just focusing instead on the social studies. So I finished up a degree in poli sci, minored in African studies, minored in religion, minored in international relations, and so I got all this stuff, and then went to DC for the summers, and then finally, after I finished college, I went to be a teacher. I taught second grade for a few years at a school called Garcia Elementary in Houston,
mhm,
and that was the thing that I did for a few years, to a program called Teach for America. Learned a lot. I learned how to take care of a classroom full of kids,
mhm,
and I remember my children. A lot of them had issues, and I remember kind of connecting the dots that my kids' issues a lot of times stem from their home life. Okay.
mhm,
I remember CPS, Child Protective Services, coming to my classroom to interview certain kids. I remember a few home visits that I did. This is good. What, we're in 2025, so this is 2003, 2005,
mhm,
20 years ago. And so I was doing or observing and learning a lot about the family dynamic.
mhm,
And along the way, I went to St. Thomas. I got a master's degree in education. And I thought I was going to go down the path of becoming a superintendent one day, going up the chain, right? Doing you're a teacher, then you
yeah,
become a principal, and
Mhm.
then you work at the regional level, and then eventually you become a superintendent. And I think if I had stuck down that path, I think I would have done it.
Mm.
Um, but I had all this background from college and like it's the legal areas, so I decided to put the two together: education and law.
Mm.
So I decided to go to law school. And one of the places I went to work during a spring semester during law school was the Texas Education Agency. I was an intern there. And one of the other places I worked was the Attorney General. And so that is where the whole family law came in, because I remember just
Mm.
making the connection that for children to have a chance, for kids to grow up and make something of themselves, the family structure, the life that parents give them, the life that I had got from my parents, because education was the key, as from an immigrant family. But
Mhm.
the opportunities that your family can give you will make all the difference in the world. But some kids are not even given a chance because the opportunities are basically robbed from them from the generation above. And they're
Mm.
not even given the opportunity. And so a child who in second grade in my classroom who's having problems, or who's reading at a reading fluency of 80 words a minute, 90 words a minute,
Mm.
which is pretty low. But you want to get them to 120 words a minute by the time they're in third grade.
Yeah.
If a child is having that kind of problem at that level and no one's reading to them at home, mom and dad are splitting up, mom and dad are fighting, they are in a house, where they're just lacking resources, how far is that kid going to get? Okay. And the, I could tell that my kid's future. I could see where they're going to wind up.
Mhm.
One child, particularly, I remember my student, uh, bad little boy.
Mhm.
Literally, 15 years later, I was able to go on the criminal websites of the Harris County court system, and I found that child who had
You
been in
found you
prison.
found it.
I
You
found him.
found it.
He had been in prison. All the traits that kid had been going through, he winded up proving those prophecies true. He
Mm.
stayed in the same cycle. It was so logical. You could see a person who is being brought up in a home that is destructive and that's broken. That person ends up, living a life that is destructive and broken.
Mhm.
And it broke my heart because I remember, trying to help this child. He was one of the only kids who literally got into a fight with me. I mean, he made me bleed. I remember this. Trying to control this child. It was out of control.
Physically?
Hmm? Yes,
It was
it was a
physical?
physical thing. Elementary school, and
Wow.
and when you then look a couple decades later, it's not a surprise. It's not a shock. That the same individual ends up being in and out of prison
Mhm.
years later, and so that is really why I do this. I don't think I've actually ever said that on camera before. That
Mhm.
that it all connects for me. That if you love your kids, then you got to give them stability.
Mm.
It's going to require a little bit of sacrifice to work with the other parent. When parents fight, and 'cause I don't have kids myself,
Mhm.
but I've like touched the lives of more kids than I can count, right?
Mm.
When parents fight and they pull their children into it, I've seen that.
Mm.
When parents have conflict and they're not able to address their conflicts, and the kids see, oh, that's how I resolve my conflict, with my fist. That's how I resolve my conflict, by gaslighting. When parents don't ever show or model how you resolve conflict with their
Mhm.
children, those kids are guaranteed to then repeat the same cycle. Your kids are guaranteed to then go and start popping pills and start making some really bad life choices.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll say is the stats bear it out.
Yeah.
Fathers in the lives of their daughters and lives of their sons, when fathers, we talk about this whole absent father thing. Okay,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
uh, when parents struggle and there's an absent father, and then mom is the primary, caretaker, and the children don't see their dad, that, all the statistics bear it out, is then going to be what fuels a lot of the problems. Girls growing up looking for, love in the wrong places.
Mm-hmm.
So this talk is about men and divorce,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope the biggest takeaway from tonight, from this conversation, is for men to remember, when you have children, that second generation is completely dependent upon you being present.
Mm.
Even if you guys are separated, even if you're not together, it depends on you being present and being active. Yes, mom might be difficult, but your
Yeah.
kids deserve it. Your kids need it. And so, um, anyway, I've just seen it all. I've
Mm.
seen the men who kind of give up, who kind of back off and say, you know what, forget it. My kids can come chase me when they're
When they
older.
are, you know,
I've
older.
heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard of the mom who might say something like, you know what, I'm the mom and the dad. I've literally heard
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And the kids don't need a man. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard, but I've seen the opposite. I've seen moms who want the father to be involved, who, like, I don't want our child to go through X, Y, and Z. I need you. I need your help. And the man's the one who distances himself, because of her.
Mm.
So, good and bad and ugly
Okay.
and everything in
Okay.
between. But bottom line, you gotta be active. Anyway, I kind of went on a tangent because I think your question was about, me, but really this is why I do it. It's
All right.
why I'm so passionate about trying to help people make peace and
Mm-hmm.
helping give them the skills that they need to communicate better, so that their children are not going to be the ones stuck repeating the cycle in the next generation.
Got it. Got it. And when you think about your work today,
Yeah.
right, after all these years of helping families, what part of it still feels meaningful to you?
Yeah, I guess the part that's meaningful is helping people, I guess, transform their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a therapist, um, but I sometimes feel like I'm one. I'm not a licensed counselor, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I kind of feel like I'm one. And because you end up giving a lot of advice to people, a lot of life advice. I kind of play the big brother role to a lot of my clients who are men, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because when you see the patterns over and over and over and over again, you are able to tell them, you can predict for them. um, but when you help somebody or two people transform their relationship to become more effective when it comes to growing a child,
Mm-hmm.
um, lessen the conflicts between the two of them, help them make peace, that definitely, it makes you feel good.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or the people who come to you during the mediation and they say to themselves, "Oh no, we'll never settle. The other side is
Mm-hmm.
so unreasonable." But and they both have lawyers and they're fighting, and then it has happened so many times. Shockingly, I get it
Mm-hmm.
settled. We resolve the case. We
Okay.
address it. It might take all night. It might take 6, 7, 8 hours of talking, but we're able to get them to put down the sword and address the issue a different way, and not have to go to court. That makes me feel good.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I know you mentioned you being young, right? Like the story between you and your sister.
Yeah.
But if you look back at your younger self,
Yeah.
like the man who first walked into law school or made the decision, would you have imagined that you'd be doing this kind of work today?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess, I know I mean, I don't know how, but I believe in God, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that we're all here for a purpose. Okay, so in that mode of thinking, yes, I always believe that I'm destined for a big thing that I want to change the world and make an impact. Okay, and do something good, leave
Mm-hmm.
this world better than I found it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just didn't know what it was. I just never knew what it was going to be. And so now I'm starting to realize what it is. And I think we all have to be big thinkers, that way.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody is small in the eyes of the creator. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you are here, you're here for a purpose. Your life is not meaningless. You have to do something with the time that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a phrase I like. Do something. You can't
Okay.
just do nothing. So, so yeah, I guess I didn't know what it was going to be, but I'm delightfully surprised.
Mm. Okay. All right, cool. So, first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing, man. Like you went really deep, and I like it. Right, you're very honest. As always, I like it. At least I give me an idea, an understanding who the person behind, like behind the titles and everything is.
Yeah.
Right. So, now that we have the context, right, and I wanted to do that because for so many men, the hardest part isn't knowing the law; it's knowing how to prepare for what's coming,
Yep.
and that's where I want to go next, right? The preparation part. So most men don't realize how much they can do before things ever reach the courtroom. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see men make when they first start the divorce process?
Yeah. I guess being caught flat-footed. I kind of mentioned it before, where
Mm-hmm.
people haven't sat down and thought about a plan. They haven't imagined what would come next, and which is kind of sad. You gotta think about the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are not just animals. We have to plan. This is kind of why most people don't have a will, right? Nobody wants to think about their death. Nobody wants to think about that uh, ultimate thing. But we have to think about the future. Planning. If you, what's the phrase? If you fail to plan, you
You
plan to
plan to
fail,
fail, yeah.
right? And too many people who are going to go through this don't. They kind of live with the deer in the headlights kind of thing. They're frozen sometimes in fear, frozen by anxiety, frozen by not knowing what's to come, which are all fears that we can have, in our lives. But there's going to be a time you have to get up and dust yourself off and do something. And and so when you ask the question, what are some things people might fail to do? Um, it's failing to plan, and it's not being ready. It's being taken for a ride when you and this doesn't mean you plan by like hiding assets and planting evidence to try to persuade and you know um, sowing gossip into potential witnesses' heads to try to get them on your side, gaslighting people. No, 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 no. We're not talking about that. We're talking about maybe taking a proactive step, talking to the other side, negotiating a little bit, imagining what your options are going to be, going to go to the bank and looking at your options, as far as refinancing, like taking proactive steps. It's a free country. You have a right to go do these things. Um, but far too often, people come to the divorce process or to the mediation table, and they have done no thinking. And I'll just ask them, so what was the plan exactly? I didn't know. Well, you have to come to the table with some options of what you can and cannot do. Okay. Um, I think planning or thinking about options when it comes to if when you have kids, when kids are involved, you're thinking about your money and potentially how you'll live, how much you're going to be paying for support, how much can you afford, what are your bills going to be, what are your expenses going to be. Okay, money. You're planning about space. How far is mom going to live with the children? How distant is it going to be? How are you going to have to fly? Are you gonna have to travel? What are your plans are when you leave from work? Are you gonna have enough time to get the kids to school? Because now you're going to be a single parent household now, right? So money, space, and then you have to think about time. Time becomes this like like it's a condition, but it's also a criteria by which you measure things. So, for example, time and money are connected, right? So a man might say to me, hey, I want 50-50 with my children, and I don't want to pay child support. So there's time, and using that time as the function by which he then concludes how much he should pay. And many states around the country, Florida, for example, will calculate child support based on how much time you spend with a child. So you have to think ahead about time. Will your work allow you to have the time to spend with the children in a way that's going to kind of rival how much time mom spends with the children? Will your holiday times and spring break times and summer times allow you to spend time to take the kids on vacation and go do activities with them? So, you have to think about these things ahead of time before you get to the table. Money, plan it out. Time, plan it out. And space. And I just think far too many men don't think about these things. They start doing the thinking when they get to the table.
Good to know.
And I just think it's because of fear.
Okay.
It's a scary thing.
All right. So I think you mentioned money quite a bit.
Yeah,
All right. So, from your experience of what you've seen, can you give us some specific? Because when you talk about money, there's like child support, lawyers' fees, properties, all of it is involved.
correct.
So, do you have specific way that men can prepare so that they're not shocked later?
Well, I think tips. Let's talk about child support, okay? Because
Hmm.
this one's always the issue.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it is. It is. The most contentious part of child support, people would think, is the amount you pay.
Hmm.
But I think the most contentious part of child support is what we call retroactive child support or back child support. The
Mm.
classic situation where the parties are separated and the kids live with mom, as an example. Dad doesn't live with mom or the
Hmm.
kids. Dad might send mom money. Dad might buy the kid stuff, but he
Hmm.
doesn't pay regular child support voluntarily because there's no court order making him. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then sometime later, mom decides to go to the courts in Texas, the Attorney General, Florida Department of Revenue,
Hmm.
and open up a child support case. And then all of a sudden, dad is getting a summons to go to court, and they're asking him for tens of thousands of dollars in retroactive child support. That is a reality check like nobody's business.
Okay, now I never understand. How
Mm.
does that make sense? All right, how does that make
Well,
sense?
I can tell you how it makes sense legally. You may not like it,
Okay.
but legally, here's the idea. Mom has been taking care of these kids in theory by herself
Hmm.
and in effect paying dad's half. The law then allows mom to treat that as a loan to dad because she was taking care of his portion. So there's no loan without interest. So the law is not just going to give her a judgment for dad's half, but also
Hmm.
tack on interest. So that's why we get to these situations where when the state gets involved, they calculate the numbers, and some of these men find themselves with tens of thousands of dollars in the hole with
Hmm.
6% interest, with whatever interest it is. Okay. And they may ask, wait a minute, okay, I get the child support, but why interest? Because no loan is without interest. Okay, so and we want to incentivize dad to pay it. Look, people might not like it, but that's a reality in most states. And it gets even worse when your child is receiving any kind of state benefits like Medicaid, TANF, CHIP, and then
Mm-hmm.
that the government's gonna be like, look, we're not gonna let this go. Mom might want to let it go, but we're not gonna let it go. We need that money collected.
Mm-hmm.
So my number one tip for the most contentious issue in child support is men, do not let yourself get caught owing back child support. Have the evidence in your hand, have the proof that you have been contributing. In fact, nothing stops you if you're separated from going to put yourself on child support. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
when I worked for the Attorney General's office, we found this a lot. Some men were the ones who opened up the case against
Yeah.
themselves because they realized, look, I might not get custody. The kids live with mom, fine. But I do not want her to, one, keep my kids away from me, because if you do a child support order, you're going to get a custody order out of it as well, that you can see your
Mm-hmm.
kids. But two, I'm not going to then get accused of not supporting my children. So that's why a lot of men would do themselves a big favor by
Mm-hmm.
going ahead and starting the process, initiate it, because you're going to have a lot more sympathy from a judge when the judge sees, oh, this man was trying, this man was giving, this man
Yeah.
was the one who opened up the case. And I've had lots of judges say, you know what, back child support retro is discretionary in our courts. I'm not going to order it. Most judges will order it. But a lot of judges, if they see that a man was trying and wanting to help support, and especially if it was mom who was rejecting his money, oh, I don't need your money. No, 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 no. Then that guy can probably come out not owing any back. But anyway, you have to make
Mm.
sure that you have evidence. Don't go to court empty-handed. Make sure you have the proof that you've been helping to support your kids.
All right. So when you talk about it, I think I had a client
Mm,
that was having issue with the mother of his kid.
yeah.
I mean, they were still living together, but he came to see me because he wanted some solution to help him how to make the relationship stronger. But at some point, he had to leave the house, and he's like, you know what? I have a few children, and we may or may not get together. He went and put himself on child support,
Yep.
right? And I'm like, dude, I never heard of him. Like, yeah, like I'm trying to protect myself just in
Correct.
case something like that happened.
Yep.
And I mean, to be honest, I never heard of it, but
Yep.
as
It
you say,
happens.
it looks like it happens.
It happens. Yeah. And I years ago I started telling guys this, hey, you might want to consider putting yourself on child support because mom might say today that she doesn't want your money, but she can change her mind. And we're
Mm,
allowed to go back up to 4 years statutorily for retro or birth or separation, whichever's more recent. And so a dude who hasn't seen his kid in 10 years and they've been separated and the state goes back 4 years, I've literally seen a $60,000 back child
ooh,
support judgment. I'm not talking about he's supposed to pay a certain amount of money and he's failed to
mhm,
pay and he's in arrears. I'm not talking about
mhm,
arrears. I'm talking about retro. Big difference. People sometimes conflate the two things. There's arrears and there's retro. And retroactive support is something that, in my opinion, is kind of, predictable. You just need
mhm,
to know that the state will have no mercy. If
mhm,
it goes after you, mom might have mercy. Mom can release. Mom can forgive, and she can say, "Look, I'll take a lump sum, and I don't want to do that to him."
mhm.
But if you have the wrong mom, you might have a big problem.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me jump into something a little different here
Sure,
because I've seen that you build tools like, and you write blogs, and I think a calculator and an ebook to guide parents, right?
sure. I've done a lot of different things. Kind of a tech geek. Um, I was talking to a developer friend of mine the other day. It's like, why did I go to law school for? I, oh, I wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't work. But I realized I should have just gone to like computer engineering. Maybe that would have made more sense because I love tinkering with technology and molding technology into with the law then produces what we call legal tech, and legal technology is a real thing. And every year in Chicago, for example, there's the annual American Bar Association legal tech conference. And so I went out there just this past year, and it's on my blog on lmipodcast.com, where I basically get to schmooze with all the different legal tech folks, and it's exciting. But along the way, I've decided to start building my own tools, and I've done a lot of tinkering, myself, on web design and stuff like that. But decided to get serious about this, and I started paying some money to as an investor, into some actual platforms. And so one of the ones we have coming out is called Zodiar .ai. Basically, it's a tool to help mediators help people resolve their conflicts using artificial intelligence. AI is all around us, and so with on Zoom, the most popular tool mediators use these days. You come on Zoom, and the mediator will help you resolve your dispute. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to have the assistance of AI technology to help maybe suggest resolutions to your dispute in ways you may have not thought? And that's one of the amazing things about generative AI, and that is it can become a great inspiration tool. Because we have a brain, we're smart, but imagine a supercomputer being able to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it will
Yeah.
open up new possibilities of different solutions and resolutions
Hmm.
that people in conflict might not have thought of, especially if their amygdala is hijacked. And so Zodiac.ai is coming out this winter. So I'll be talking more about it online. People who follow me will be getting previews coming up pretty soon. But I'm excited about it, and it's all about conflict resolution using technology.
Okay. So, how can those tools, like especially the one that you talked about,
Yeah.
how can this help men lower stress and feel more in control?
So, well, I think the mediation generally will lower your stress because you're not having to be the one to do the communication. You're having somebody help you do it. You're not alone. And if you can get AI involved, it could potentially help it even more by giving you potential other solutions you haven't thought about before. Some of the other tools like child support calculator, these kind of things. Look, AI can do these things now. You don't need specific tools and platforms for it. But if somebody wants to get educated, some of the things that I'm building out, would give them that kind of knowledge. Like you mentioned, the ebook I wrote. Okay, these
Mm-hmm.
are common questions that people have about child support. I took all the stuff that I knew and I just put it into a book, and the common questions that people ask, and so that's something that people can go to and use and look up. But I think the most effective way is going to be to get people to the table. And again,
Okay.
this goes back to the instant mediator idea that you don't have to live in conflict. My suggestion would be, if you are in conflict, whether you're in courts or not,
Mm-hmm.
you can invite the other side to the table to negotiate, not
Mm-hmm.
just with you, but through a third person who can help you. And
Okay.
my recommendation is, don't just give the person a mediator you found online, or like me. Okay, give the other parent three names. Give them
Mm-hmm.
three names, three mediators, and ask them to pick one. Because what you want to do is you want to build rapport. You want them to trust the mediator. Okay, and so pick people you trust. Give those names to your opponent and ask them to select one of them, and then
Mm-hmm.
you both contact that person together and ask that person if they can become a facilitator to help you communicate. And
Okay.
therapists can do the same kind of thing, counselors as well. They're trained the same kind of conflict resolution skills. But I think mediators are people who want to help you stay out of court. And
Mm.
so that's why you would go to that person.
Okay. All right. So let's try to make it a little bit real, right?
Mm.
If someone makes a good living, but still feels like child supports keep him stuck, what kind of mindsets or plan should he have going into this process?
Someone makes a good living.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Well, first off, a lot of it is out of your control because of state law, right?
Mm.
In Texas, for example, the state law just got amended in September 1st that bounced up the child support cap.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if you're making really good money, then I think on September 1st, a whole lot of guys who make really good money had a collective sigh because, like, oh no, here we go. Because
Mm.
we're not looking at the first 9250, net income. Now we're looking at it's like 1200, plus.
Mm.
And so, oh, I'm sorry, 12,000 plus. And so if you're making that kind of money each month, all of a sudden the cap has gone up for you. And there's it's gonna piss a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but this is why you vote. This is why you talk to your legislators if you think it's too high.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the defense of the receiving person, the obligee, I think their argument would be like, listen, inflation is killing us. Okay, things are really expensive. Kids are not getting any cheaper, and so
Mm-hmm.
therefore we needed this, this extra. But if a person makes a kind of money and the other person, the other parent doesn't want to work with them, then yeah, you're going to have to, live by the cap.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say it's going to have kind of a cap, some of them are going to be higher. So I don't know if there's really a way you can, address that unless
Mm-hmm.
you make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, if a person owes a lot of money in the past, let's say not because of retro, but because they fell behind,
Yeah.
or because it was too much for them and they can't live, and their income has
Mm-hmm.
dwindled, has fallen down, and they have not been able to get to the courthouse to get the number changed, then I get calls a lot from guys who have a lot of child support debt. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the guy was incarcerated, he was in prison for some time, and he's racked up a lot of debt. Those are hard because usually my first response to the guy is like, "Why didn't you get a lawyer?" And he's like, "I
Mm.
was incarcerated." I'm like, "You could have gotten a lawyer." I've had clients in
Mm.
prison before, you know, uh, but I know easier said than done. I know,
Mm.
but when a person comes out of prison owing tens of thousands of dollars, when a person lost their job and they fell behind and they owe thousands of dollars, whatever the reason is, this is where I've kind of started this little niche. I call it childsupportmediation.com.
Okay.
And it's where I tell guys, look, child support is based on income, not asset. But if you have assets, of course, the state can come in and swoop and get it,
Mm-hmm.
okay, within certain guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
These are called administrative remedies, okay? Like they can zap your bank account, they can zap your tax returns to help, pay the debt down.
Yes.
But But because child support is based on income and not assets, generally speaking, a lot, one of the secret weapons, one of the powers that guys have is most of the time the court is not going to make him pay the entire debt upfront one time. Think about that. That then means if he is able to find some money through relatives or friends or borrows the money even and then offers to pay money up front, he has the power to make a deal. He has a power of leverage because mom
Mm.
is then given the option, listen, mom, you can either get this $50,000 from me at the rate of X amount of money until the day I die, or you can settle with me for say 25,000 one time flat. Which one would mom pick if those were the only two options?
Mm.
That's where I'm going. And so a lot of times I'm doing a lot of negotiations for guys. If I'm not the mediator, but I'm a lawyer, I put
Mm-hmm.
that hat on. I'm basically asking the other side, listen, my client owes you all this money. He owes it to you. We admit it. However, you're going to get it at the lowest possible amount of money because he's my client. I got to protect him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I've talked to him and he is able
Mm-hmm.
to find a way to get a big enough lump sum to give to you in exchange for something that's worth his while, like forgiveness, like release. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I've discovered can actually make a difference. And I hope guys who are listening think about this. You don't have to live under child support debt. If you have some kind of method of getting some serious cash, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna
Yeah.
pinch you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's certainly possible. And I say, listen, it's better you owe a payday loan than to owe your baby mama, because
Mm.
there's no debtor's prison in America, but there is child support jail. It's better you owe family and friends that can come together on your behalf and collect, and instead of owing your baby mama. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I've made these deals many times. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
for even a guy who owed over $100,000 in back child support, we were
Oof.
able to settle because we made a deal. If if you can dig deep enough and get some kind of cash that's
Mm-hmm.
going to get mom's attention because it's significant, then you could save yourself a lot of money and make her very happy in the process because she could do something with that money instead of waiting for it and maybe never even getting it because you might die.
Yeah. Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. So now I want to talk about something that I believe doesn't get talked about or discussed enough, especially in this when you talk about this context. It's the emotional side.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like a lot of men carry guilt, shame, or anger into the process, and it ends up following them everywhere.
Hmm.
So, from what you've seen, how do those emotions show up during the divorce process, and how do they hurt men in the long run?
Yeah. So we're all emotional creatures. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We just some of us don't admit it. And I have this theory. I'm always saying this. All humans are fundamentally the same. We
Mm-hmm.
all are fundamentally the same as human beings, as people, no matter where we are. Okay. The same kind of things that would make a person tick here is going to make the person tick there in degree. We differ in degree.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going through something like divorce, there's certain emotions that are going to come out. You mentioned a couple: fear,
Mm-hmm.
guilt, shame. And I think the way men tend to handle these kind of emotions is to suppress. We
Mm.
we bury it, suppress it, because society's told us that if you show s- these emotions, then you're weak.
Yeah.
And one of the people I've had on my podcast, Dr. Bernadette Tanga, she wrote the book Beneath the Armor. Okay, how to help men lead to their authentic self. I'm messing up the paraphrase, but
Mm-hmm.
the book is called Beneath the Armor. That men from childhood are conditioned to not show emotions, to suppress emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and because you were called a sissy, you're called things that are supposed to make you feel that showing these kind of feelings or emotions is somehow um, either feminine or weak, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
be strong, you have to be tough, you have to put it in the family, you're the provider, which might be natural,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still human beings. and
Yes.
and we then, all human beings, have to release emotion a certain way. We all do. And some people might cry, another person might express the emotion a certain way, but a lot of men don't know how. So what we do is we bottle it in and we force it down, and then when it comes out with a vengeance. When it comes
Mm.
out with aggression. It comes out with anger. It comes out with a lashing of a tongue. It comes out in extremely negative and toxic ways. So if your wife, men who are listening, has ever told you, that the way you spoke to her broke her down, she's probably right. But a lot of times we don't even realize it in the things that we say. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that we have to do is do better for our own selves and learn to get in tune with the things that we suppress. A lot of it was suppressed from childhood. We got to
Mm-hmm.
go back there. And
Okay.
so anyway, that's the issue about the emotions and men not knowing how, to deal with them, and then how we've been manifested. And I think the number one way we manifest it is, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this. It's work.
Mm-hmm.
Work can become a drug. Work can become, we start to believe that work is our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Work is our mission. Work is our destiny. And if you can work and you can produce something, then you can show people, this thing that, gives you standing and stature. And so work can kill your marriage. Work
Mm. So
can,
we tend to want to know if men we tend to attach our worth
yes,
to our job,
absolutely.
basically.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and I think what's always missing is balance. This is why we're given, 6 days to work and a day of rest. But when you're working so much, where it takes the place of everything else, that's unsustainable.
Okay.
And eventually it's going to crack you. And so that would be my thing. I think we can become, addicts to our jobs, and then drive it, and see it as our identity so much that we lose touch of so many other things. So anyway, the question you raise is an important one. The emotional health, the mental health, these things are things we have to think about. So solutions, tips. Well, um, holding things in doesn't help. It's just a fact. It's going to come out. It's just going to come out in a negative way. So one way you address it is you have to talk. And when I say talk, I don't mean like communicate a certain way. I mean you have to express it. You have to get it out. And that could mean to various people. It could be to a pastor. It could be to a brother. It could be to a life group of men. It could be to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor or a therapist. But whoever it is to, it needs to come out.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and
But would you say that you encourage men to find the emotional support when they're in the middle of this?
absolutely, absolutely. I think not just men but women need it as well. And
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of support, groups. And I will say this. I've been invited. I've talked to different ladies who are like divorce coaches, for example, and they help women
Mm-hmm.
going through this. And so I commend the work you're doing because you're doing the same kind of thing for guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a need for it, because one of the things that we've talked about before is this: when one way that men go through divorce differently than how women go through it
Mm-hmm.
is men go through it in isolation. Men go through divorce in a very lonely manner.
Mm-hmm.
When a woman goes through a divorce, she tends to have people come in to check on her in a
Mm-hmm.
way that men don't. I think men go through divorces, from what I've seen, very alone.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason is the men sometimes want it that way because they want to be left alone. But
Mm-hmm.
other times it's because other people don't know how to deal with you, and so they kind of stay away. And so getting people around you is probably a good idea if you're a man and going through a divorce. Women do it, and women should do it. Men, sometimes I'll hear guys say, "Oh, she's talking to her girlfriends. That's why she has this position." Well, maybe you should go talk to your guy friends. Like we need support, and go and talking to people who have gone through it helps. And talking to relationship professionals helps. So that's the thing. I've also heard and understood, because I've seen this, that when men go through a divorce or separation, they tend to lose friends. Okay, and what I mean by that, so if you're a couple and you have common friends, sometimes common friends don't know how to deal with a couple they know that's who are splitting up. They don't know. Okay. And they and like, and truth be told, most friends hate being forced to pick a side. Nobody wants to pick a side. They like both of you. Okay. But a lot of times, I'll have people say, "Oh, I'm in a custody battle, I'm a divorce. I got John Doe, so and so, who's going to come to court to testify for me. They're going to be my witness." My thing to the client is like, "Are you sure about that?" They may have told you that. "Oh, I'll come to court for you." When the time comes, they're not going to want to come. It's just what happens. People don't want to be involved, to be torn like that. They don't want to take a side, unless it's so egregious. It's a grandparent and it's a kid being abused. That's different. But most people don't want to have to pick a side between friends. And so, when you are a man going through a divorce, and you have common friends, be ready. The, you lose some. You lose
Mm-hmm.
some because I don't know why. People either just back away. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be in the middle. And so you're going to sense it. You're going to sense the distance, okay, from your common friends. And that's not to say that they're going to be on the woman's side. It's just that, sometimes they don't know how to deal, with the man. And so I think a lot of guys come out, go through the divorce process more lonely, and they end the divorce process with fewer friends than they had before. And
Yeah.
I know that. And so
Yeah.
something you got to
Yeah.
think about.
That's been my personal experience as well. Like when I was going through it, um, I found out that most of the guys that I knew when I was married, they all disappeared.
Mm,
Right, like only like a few people showed up for me when I needed it, and the biggest part was my family
yep.
and some of my oldest friends that knew me before I got married. But I think marriage also make you lose touch with your old friends, right?
Mm,
Especially if they're not married, because when
yep.
you're married, like you started doing things,
Exactly.
so things are very different than when you were single.
Yep.
And on my experience, I lost touch with all of them, but the people that actually reached out when I was going through a difficult time were actually my oldest friends.
Hmm.
All the new ones, it was like, okay, they were not even responding to my phone. Some of them were not even responding for my phone
Yep.
to my phone call or my text. Others just is like, hey, you know what, we're busy. And others just like, you know what, they just disappeared. Never,
Yeah.
I never heard from them up to today.
Yeah. It's a
So,
very common thing. And a lot of men listening will know what we're talking about. And
hmm
so that's why well, first off, you know who your friends are, right? But at the same time, one caution I would give men who are going through a divorce: try as hard as possible to put yourself in your friend's shoes, because sometimes your friend doesn't want to hurt you, and they don't want to be forced to choose, and they don't want to be feeling like they're on one person's side when they see a division. They probably like both of you, but they don't know how to deal with this, and Your family generally is always going to have your back, generally speaking, and sometimes people, I think people would agree that they'll know somebody whose family didn't have their back and they felt it was the deepest betrayal, right?
Mm.
Because, oh my goodness, you're my blood. How can you side with them? You've seen that as well. But I think even family, they'll love you. They're there for you because you're their blood, and you're the relation. However, even to a degree, they may still care for the other person as well, who you are now divorcing, and they don't want to, come out, as being completely ugly towards the other side. You know. So anyway, I think it's a tough thing. It's a difficult thing, and the way you mitigate it, go be around others. Okay, if you're a churchgoer, there are men's groups on how to go through divorce with other guys who are going through the same thing or who have gone through it, who can kind of tell you, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that might be a I'm not saying we're ending, but when we end this call, I think that's what we need to leave people with, and that is, in addition to some of the other tips I've given tonight, and that is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, um, there is, like, time is a healer. I I never thought about it this way until, like, some stuff happened to me. But time, as it passes, will allow things that are very hurtful and
Mm-hmm.
painful to
Mm-hmm.
recede to your more distant memories,
Okay.
and it won't be so fresh in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore it will not hurt as long. It's still gonna be there. I mean, pain is
Yeah.
pain, but it's
Mm.
going to be. It's like when you've lost somebody. It's a death. Over time, it is fresh. It hurts over time. When you think back, the pain's still gonna come, but it won't be on your mind as fresh, and therefore it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. And a death of a marriage is a loss in much the
Okay.
same way.
Okay. All right. Good. I mean, that was good information. All right, and that literally help us jump into this next section, which is co-parenting, because this is where a lot of fathers
Yep.
struggle the most, and it's also where I used to struggle a lot in the beginning, right? But now I have a handle of it. I still struggle with it. It's
Yep.
not the easiest, but from my conversation with a lot of men, this is one of the biggest button issues. So, for you though, like, how do you help men see that they still have a role and can still be strong and steady fathers?
So, co-parenting is hard because there's no rule book on how to co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a theoretical sense, it's unnatural
Mm-hmm.
because um, when you had these two kids together, you weren't planning on raising them up from a distance.
Yeah.
You were planning on the idea. The hope would have been to be raising them as a team, as a unit. And
Yeah.
so when you find yourself then separated or divorced, you all of a sudden are, look, there's like no rule book on how to do this two different household thing, where you get to police your house the way you want when your kids are
Mm-hmm.
with you during your time, but they get to police their home the way they want. Isn't
Yeah.
that going to create some conflict inevitably?
Yeah. That's two different systems.
Yeah. And so it's natural that there's going to be conflict there, but then it's unnatural on how to resolve it because nobody ever told you. There was, if especially if you never had it modeled. If you came from a home, two-parent household,
Mm-hmm.
you never had it modeled for you. How do you deal with it? So I think that's why it's hard. People are thrown into it, and all of a sudden you have the emotions involved, and then you have past hurts that have not been dealt with, and then the it's not like once the court case got done, you guys just suddenly learned how to communicate together
Mm-hmm.
well in a way that's not going to trigger each other. You still have
Yes.
those strong feelings. How do you do it? So there are, thankfully, there
Mm-hmm.
are we've been doing this a lot, right? There are a lot of homes in America where it's a two parent, two I'm sorry, single household, of parents who are co-parenting together. It's a common thing now. It's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. And so, one, you need to have boundaries. Two, you need to have things written down. Usually
Mm-hmm.
it's called a court order. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So the function of time we talked about before, that's going to be addressed because it's going to say exactly your time, my time.
My time.
Here's how we
Yeah.
share it.
Mm-hmm.
Function of money is going to be addressed. Support. Here's how we're going to share support over school supplies, extracurricular activities. How we're going to cover expenses to bring the child back and forth. If how we're going to address, financial contribution if there's two different income levels between the parents. The function of space. How are we going to deal with distance? Because I mean, how many cases do we have where
Mm-hmm.
mom lives by the school, dad lives 50 minutes away, dad wants to bring the child to school, mom doesn't because mom's like, I don't want the kids sleeping in a car on the way
Mm-hmm.
to school every morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good for the kid. And this becomes a conflict area for the parents.
Okay.
And so sometimes distance becomes a problem. So all
Okay.
these are reasons.
So,
Go ahead.
all right. So when you talk about this, like when there's conflicts like that, right?
Yep.
What are some practical ways that dad can communicate better with their ex, especially when it comes to when there's tension, emotional situations?
Well, I think, well, first off, there are programs out there, okay, called co-parenting applications. And then there are co-parenting classes, and fundamentally, these are getting to communication and how the co-parenting platforms, okay, programs we're talking about, and there's the three that come to my mind: ourfamilywizard.com, talkingparents.com, appclose.com. These are applications you get on your phone that allows you to speak to the other parent using an app, basically. On the ourfamilywizard.com one, there is a tool called a tone meter. When you are writing, if it detects that you're using a curse word, it's going to grade your message and basically asks, "Are you sure you want to send this message?" Because
Mm,
it's intended to kind of help calm down the communication, okay, and help people address each other better. But
yeah,
that's one tool. That's one practical tool that we've put a lot of parents on. That's made a big difference. Is to keep things documented in writing so we can end he said she said. we
gotcha.
can we can end the problem of I messaged her and she doesn't respond back. Judge,
Hmm.
I don't know what's happening with my kids because I asked the other parent a question, they will respond. Well, the app has a red receipt feature that confirms they saw the message. So now you've held the other parent accountable. So these are practical little things built in with technology that helps you get some kind of control back about how you guys are going to communicate, together. That's
Okay.
one massive tip. Go ahead and use a co-parenting tool like
Okay.
one of these apps. That's one.
Okay.
By the way, the other benefit is a lot of these tools are now starting to integrate video conferencing so that if you're wanting to talk to the child, you can using it, or and even you can pay like half of the medical bill, whatever, you can pay through the app. So anyway, it's a great tool to be able to help people um
Okay.
communicate better.
Okay. So I think when I'm talking, it's like also in this issue of in this point of co-parenting, men also often feel like they are just visitors in their children's
Yeah.
lives,
Yep.
and that's something, as I say, that's something I also struggle with, and
Yep.
even now, right? So, how do you help fathers change that perspective?
I was going to first speak to the other side of that, and that
Mm-hmm.
is, ladies, if you're listening, one of the things that people don't talk about is this feeling, that this sentiment you just hit on, and that is, men hate hate the feeling of being considered a weekend dad. Like, they hate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most disrespectful thing to feel that you are known as a visitor. Okay, I've had so many dads like literally take offense, and I
Mm-hmm.
even started using some phrases differently because it was a trigger point.
Mm-hmm.
That the like even the phrase non-custodial parent, even that
Mm-hmm.
phrase, okay, is offensive to a lot of men because they don't want to feel like they are, like, not just half, but the other half. They want to
Yeah.
feel that they are a whole parent to their child, just like mom is. But how we've had it, okay, and how many people look at it is, mom is a whole parent and dad is a contributing parent. And
Okay.
literally the language we use is custodial parent, CP,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
non-custodial parent. And so I wish that language would change. And so the way that men need to start thinking about it is, I think, just own the feeling that you have. You're
Mm-hmm.
completely justified to feel that you aren't just a participant in your kid's life. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so now how do we make sure that you, in fact, are not, practically speaking?
Mm-hmm.
Well, be there, engage, make sure that you are in every little league game, make sure that you are at every teacher conference, make sure that you're participating in your daughter's ballerina, swimming lessons, make sure that you're going to karate class, make sure, okay, um,
Mm-hmm.
don't let mom ever have the excuse of being able to say he doesn't come. He knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've messaged him. I told him, but he hasn't made time. So do what you have to do to make it
Mm-hmm.
happen. And coach little league. Go in and be there. Do the kind of things that you would naturally do as a loving father over your
Okay.
child. And that does go back to the whole time thing, right? Because
Time
you need time to do that. And this is why a lot of men want 50-50. And when I ask men, what does that mean to you, 50-50?
thing.
And it means different things to different people. Sometimes it means 50-50 in money. Sometimes it means
Mm-hmm.
50-50 in time. Or sometimes it means 50-50 in decision making in the child's life. But
Gotcha.
but that's a big thing that's growing more and more and more, where men feel like, I want equality in this area of my life. I need to be in my child's life as much as mom.
Okay. All right. So, um, you talked about the tools, and I think I want to go back to the tools for a minute, okay? Because
Sure.
we know that technology can also make things a bit more impersonal.
Yeah.
So, how do you make sure that how would you help dad to make sure that even though they're using those tools or technologies, they are not forgetting about connection, the real connection between them and their children?
Technology should only be augmenting. It shouldn't be replacing. Okay. Sometimes um, I think it helps more than it hurts. That's just my feelings on it, especially if you're distant and space is a big factor. Sometimes some men are getting picked up by ICE, for example, and they're out of the country and their child's still here, child's a U.S. citizen, right? And technology, if it wasn't for technology, that that man would never participate in a child's birthday again. But technology has made it so possible now for you to be close and local. Like these Google just came up with a tool with HP called Google Beam. It's literally like a portal that you go into, and the person who's around across the world feels like they're right there facing you. Is BEAM, Google Beam. It's amazing technology. It makes you feel really lifelike. So anyway, I don't think that it should be replacing the human connection. So dads, you gotta go. You gotta be there. Make sure, like in Houston, for example, we have horrible Houston traffic, right? Well, most men, if they have a standard possession order, get every Thursday for dinner from 6 to 8 p.m. And now sometimes overnight Thursdays if they have an expanded possession order. But you know how many men don't do Thursday dinners? And they always say the same reason: traffic. Like, I don't want to spend all this time to go and have Thursday dinner for 2 hours just to spend another hour to get back home. But I'm just saying, you only get so many Thursday dinners in a child's childhood. And I think it's a sacrifice that many more men should make. I mean, some men may complain but that shouldn't be normal. That's a consequence of a schedule that was imposed upon them. But it's given to you. It's time. It's time with the child, and I think that you know, it's kind of a cool thing if a dad would go and make time for every Thursday night. You get to take your kid to dinner, and during the school year, that's the normal part of the schedule. But anyway, I just hear that a lot of men don't want to do it because of the distance. And
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody makes their own decisions, but at the
correct,
what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, don't be mad at the consequences, because at the end it's like, okay, kids don't usually remember the traffic because they don't care about it.
exactly,
It's how
yeah,
much, as you say yourself, like how much time, how present were you,
exactly.
and I think that's what's important for them. All right. So that kind of wraps up a lot of the things that I had to ask you. Again, I want to say thank you for giving me the time and the opportunity to come and talk. Tell people where they can find you, though, if they need you.
Yeah. So I'm at macperiod.com. So it's just my name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I basically made all my social media, everything around my hashtag. I'm sorry, my handle. So it's on the screen right there under my name at
Mm-hmm.
Mac-Arthur, and pretty easily found online. That will take you to all the websites, projects, everything that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully soon, Lord's willing, I'll be coming out with Zodr.ai,
Mm-hmm.
Zodr.ai, to let people be able to use technology to resolve their conflicts from
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world, across many different languages using AI. I'm really excited about that. And my main website, macperiod.com, is where everything I try to write there, and but I put my blog and my
Mm-hmm.
podcast on LMI, podcast.com. And LMI stands for, of course, Lawyers Mediators International. And
Mm-hmm.
that's on YouTube /at LMI podcast. And so everything is on LMI podcast, and LinkedIn, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually don't, I'm on social media a lot, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
use it for my personal life. I'm actually a
Mm-hmm.
very private person, believe it or not. But I'm on social media a lot, to promote these ideas and to
Mm-hmm.
talk about these things. And so I love talking to people like you, and I so appreciate you having me, come on tonight. And so hopefully this was educational for some folks out there, and they will be able to, make some other decisions that
Mm-hmm.
maybe they didn't think about before. Let me end with this. This isn't my original thought, but the number one word that blows up any mediation or negotiation or attempt to make peace and to move things forward and have resolution in the place of conflict, the number one word is liar. When you call someone a liar, okay,
Mm-hmm.
when you say you lie, no, you're lying. You're not telling the truth. So when people learn that certain words are very powerful and they're very triggering, you might want to take a step back and not use it. Find a
Okay.
different way. Men who are out there, try to remember that word. Don't accuse someone else of being a liar. No one ever takes that word sitting down. That
Okay.
word will always trigger somebody because nobody wants to be accused of it, even though it might be true.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it creates the cycle of conflict that will only make it 10 times worse. So what you want to do, and this is just from de-escalation theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
What human beings fundamentally want is to be acknowledged. Fundamentally, when we are hurting, when we are going through something, and we want to mouth it, we want to give voice to it, we want to share it, and we want to bring it out, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing in the world is to put it out there and it get rejected.
Okay.
That's the most painful thing. But once it gets acknowledged, it gives permission for it to begin the healing process in your life. And so I would say, if you want a good relationship with the co-parenting opponent, okay, it's to start by acknowledging some of their positions as potentially being valid. Yes, being valid, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, not accusing the other person of being a liar. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be good for you. Always, it's just drinking poison. The way towards peace, the way to help the other parent in a co-parenting relationship with you, is to acknowledge their positions, try to understand where they're coming from, and ask them for the same kind of grace back. If you can do that, it's going to go a long way toward helping you, build bridges and not division. Okay, so this is a very important word.
Well said, man. Definitely well said. So now this is the part where I talk directly to my listeners. If you're listening right now, I want you to take a moment. I want to take a moment to sit with you for a minute. Like, divorce changes things. It shifts your days, your routines, your money, and your sense of who you are. It's not just something that happened in court, it also happens inside of you. You might be sitting in a car right now or alone in your apartment trying to figure out what comes next. And maybe you feel like you've done everything you could, but it still wasn't enough. Maybe you feel like the system doesn't care about you or like you've lost control of your life. But what I want you to know is this: what happens in court is not the full story. You still have a say in who you become after this. You decide how you show up for your kids. You decide if you live in anger or if you start to build something steady, even if it's just one small piece at a time. My father once told me something that I never forgot. And I'm completely going to paraphrase here. He said, during the dry season, a tree loses its leaves. From the outside, it looks dry, it looks empty, it looks weak. But what matters is not what you see on the outside. What matters is how strong and deep its roots are. You might feel like that tree right now. Everything looks empty. You've lost things that matter to you. But your roots, and by that I mean your values, your love for your children, your will to rebuild, they're still alive. And that's where your strength is. So take care of those roots. Feed them with honesty, with patience, with the effort to keep showing up, even when no one sees it. Because that's what your kids will remember. Not the money, not the case, but the man who kept showing up. You might not see it yet, but this season is actually teaching your roots how to hold firm, how to grow with more depth, and how to grow with more purpose. I know it might be hard right now, but don't give up on yourself. Until next time, my friends, keep rising and thriving.